Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I am going to be colouring up a cute little ant for you today, so let's pop in and have a look. So here it is for you. Now I printed this one out of Dia's book Colouring Dreams, which I actually did a speed colouring of the little hummingbird just last week, so I'm actually doing an ant out of her book. So some of this ant picture was a little bit grayscale, so it really was really helpful in creating these cute little dewdrops here. So hopefully you guys will be able to get the same effect by following along. So I'm actually going to use markers here for this one. So I've picked a dark green color. I picked G29, and I just came in and did a sort of shadow line on the left hand side of each of these little dewdrops. So the shadow line was already marked in, so I just sort of went over that area with that color, and now I'm coming in and blending that out. So I'm using some YG17 here to blend that out. I've also created, just wanted to let you know, I've created a conversion chart to pencils as well, which is available to patrons. So if you want to have a look at that, the link is in the description below as well. So after I've done that, I've come in with YG23, and I'm just going over the top of the previous color and just bringing this a little bit further out. So this will take up a fair bit of the circle, but we're making sure that we leave, I don't know if you can see that in the video there's like a little bit of a highlight section that was left white. I want to make sure I try and leave that white. So some of the spots were quite small, so I'll put them in later on with a little bit of white gel pen, but for now I'm coming in and filling this out and trying to miss those areas. So I've got one more color to come in over this, so you could make these this section a little bit darker if you wanted to, or you could leave it light like I have. I'm going to come in next with YG00, and I'm going to go over the whole area that's left there now, except for the little white space on each of those dewdrops. So hopefully you guys will get a lot out of this. It is fantastic. This coloring page already had enough for you to be able to sort of figure this sort of thing out anyway, but I just wanted to sort of follow along, I guess, and do an image so that you can see how that it does help you and work for you by having that there in the background. So this part is really the only part that is kind of grayscale, so it is really just those dewdrops that she's trying to sort of accentuate for you so that you can get the hang of that. Now if you were to do this on a piece of paper with a normal circle, you would get the same effect. So even though that grayscale is there to help you for this first time, if you wanted to use dewdrops on another image, you could certainly do that by following along and using the same sort of technique, I guess. Also Dia has some follow along tutorials of dewdrops on her channel as well. So what I might do is link it up in the top corner there, just so you can have a look at those as well. So I've got that it must have been G28 I had earlier. I apologize for that. I've got G28 here, and I'm just going to go around the bottom of each of these now. So what we're trying to do is create a bit of a shadow on the leaf now. So the main color of the leaf will be that YG00. So we're creating some shadows from the drops on there now. So I'm just going around the bottom of each of these, which is on the highlighted side, and just creating a little bit of a line. So again, there was already a shadow there that was marked in for you, so you just need to follow along with that and finish those off. So I'm sorry you can't see that little dewdrop down the bottom there. I will pull it up later on so you can have a look at it. So now the leaves I'm going to finish off. I'm bringing out this YG17, and this will be a fair bit of color for the sort of mid-tone color there, and then at the end I'm going to blend that out again with that YG00. So we've got, I guess, 3 colors to come through with. I'll use this YG17, then YG23, and then we've got our YG00, and I'm going to fill out all of the leaves with this as well. Now in the background part of this picture, I did have trouble with my marker. I think in the previous video that I've posted, I had trouble with it being really sticky, so yeah, I kind of play around with the background a little bit. Just keep in mind that because your marker may not be like that, you won't need to play around so much in the background like I did. I was just trying to get rid of the sticky residue off it, and it just sort of didn't really want to go really well for me. But I guess I wanted still to to show you this video, because even though I had some issues with it, it still did come out quite effective. And I want you guys to realize that just because you do make one little mistake doesn't mean that you've ruined the whole entire picture, and that until somebody actually points something out, a lot of people don't actually really notice those little mistakes or things that have hidden in the image that you feel like you've made a mistake on, or it doesn't look quite right. So please don't worry about it. Don't rip up your pictures. Do continue to the end and finish them off, so that you can see and learn more by continuing on with that image. So I've got that YG. I used the YG23 just before and blended out the YG17, and now I've got YG00. So you can see there, just by doing those sections, how those dewdrops are already popping off the leaf. So they look like they are 3D already, even though we haven't finished the rest of the picture. So I've got some G29 now, and I'm coming over all of the veins in the leaves. So just sort of doing a little bit of a really thin line through the actual dewdrop. Gee, that's a tongue twister. And then continuing on and thickening up that vein through the whole leaf there. I'm also going to use this in the shadow areas as well, so you can see that I'm lining out all of those shadow areas on the leaves that they're overlapping as well. So I'm going to pop in and finish this part off here for you. So Dia has a couple of books that are quite cute. One of them's Penelope's Garden, I think it's called, and this one here is called Colouring Dreams. Really quite cute. I have heard a rumour that there may be a new book coming out soon. As I said, it's just a rumour, so I'm not sure. But they're quite cute, and I'm actually going to colour one from the Penelope's Garden one, which is a little bit more grayscale. I'm going to have a play with that in a tutorial later on as well. So yeah, very cute images. I was really happy to sort of be able to have a go at these ones. They're lovely images, and I like doing nature. It's quite nice to do something different other than sort of people. And I think the reason that this one sort of stood out to me too was because of those dewdrops, and it gives an opportunity to sort of show people who may not have seen any of the other tutorials of hers that you can do those drops really effectively, and they look fantastic. So now that I've done that colour, I'm actually going to blend it out now with that YG17. So we're trying to create or put the same colours in that were in the dewdrops now onto the leaves, because the dewdrops are reflecting off the leaf, so the colour in that is going to be in the leaf. Also too, I wanted to say that I do quite a few layers just to try and get the right depth and highlights and things through the image, and to make sure that that marker was blended. I had a little bit of trouble with one marker in particular, which I've said that the darker green, so sometimes I've just gone over it a couple of times to try and get that colour and depth in there, or I've gone over and done a couple of layers and still not quite happy with where the shadows were sitting, or how light the highlights were and things like that. So you'll see as I go through, and I'll do a few layers. If you're happy with your first or second layer, then don't worry about doing more layers. I just want you to know that you can sort of play around with this. If you're happy with your first layer and it looks like it's got good depth and things like that, then don't go playing with it too much more if you don't feel like you have to. I don't want you to just follow along and do multiple layers like I have because I've done it. I want you guys to sort of have a look at it and think, okay, yep, it does need more, I agree, or nah, look, I'm happy with it how it is now. And that's fine with me because it's your own work and I want you guys to sort of make it your own. But yeah, I do go in a few times with this and put a few layers on. So just while I was chatting then, I did swap over to the next lightest colour. So I went from YG17 to YG23, and I'm just blending that out a little bit further now. So now I'm going to go over the remaining leaf and those shadow sections to blend them all in nicely with the YG00, and I'm doing this over all of these leaves. Now these are the front facing leaves, so they're the kind of like the foreground. We want them to stand out more than we want the background to, and putting a darker background in like I'm going to, it helps to sort of make these grass sections really pop off the page, and it sort of, I guess it's a really good contrast having the dark and the light. So I'm just going to finish off popping this color on now, and I'm going to try and blend out the remainder of the shadow area there so that it sort of blends in nicely. Okay, so I did have to refill my marker there, so now it's a little bit wetter. I'm just going to come back over the areas that I felt were, the marker was a little bit dry and it didn't blend as well. So I'm just coming in to do that now. I'm going to come back in and do a second layer in a moment of the same colors. We're just going to redo them and get our depth and things like that. So you can see that even though we've got a little bit of depth in there, some of the shadow areas have really desaturated. I really wanted those quite deep, so that's why I've come in and done some more layers. So I'm just coming back in now with that G29 and just continuing to do these shadow areas, and just sort of, I guess I need to flick the marker out a little bit here too on some of those shadow areas because the lines were quite strong, but I may do that on the next layer. So, but look, I just play around with it and try and get it as deep as I can. As I said, multiple layers is sometimes better. I'm also adding in the leaves down the bottom there of the picture, which I didn't fill out earlier as well. Now I've got that YG17. I'm actually trying to make that shadow area a little bit thicker than it was the first time to try and get a little bit more depth in there. Swapping back now to the YG23, and I'm coming in and just redoing this middle section again, going over those darker colors and extending them further out. So you can see I'm actually darkening up the color of the whole leaf now by extending this a little bit further out than what I did the first time, because I thought that that lighter color was a little bit too light. So just sort of, I guess, extending this color out a little bit further so that the whole leaf isn't the lighter color anymore. So I'm going to swap back over next to my lightest color, which was the YG00, and I'm going to go over all of those areas again and blend off this YG23 out a little bit further. So the leaves are now not quite as light as they were the first time I came over them, so we have given the color a little bit more depth and deepened up the shadow areas, as well as sort of making them a little bit darker than they were previously, I just felt that they were a little bit too light. I mean, they are, I think, supposed to be close-up pieces of grass, so grass is quite green usually, so I'm just sort of, I guess, putting it in at the sun's directly shining on it or something like that to make it that lighter green. So we're using a really loose style is what it's called. We're not sort of making them, you know, too realistic. It is still just a coloring page, of course. So look, you can see there the green marker still is quite desaturated, and that's why I will come in a second and a third time, sorry, to re-go over this, because I still wasn't quite happy with how that was looking, and I just wanted you guys to see that not every picture that I do does come out how I really was sort of imagining it to come out, but I still wanted to share it with you because it's still great and it's still got lots of techniques and tips in it. And also too, you can see how I have gone over it quite a few times to get the look that I was looking for as well. So again, this book is Colouring Dreams by dear Lenihan, and she is, I'm going to link her little card thing up in the top corner as well, so you can see her her YouTube channel. Sorry, I just lost track of what I was trying to say then. So I'll pop that up in on the card as well, and I'll link the card also in the other Colouring Dreams image that I did of the hummingbird as well, so that you can have a look at that as well. So she actually has a face group book as well, so if you wanted to do some of her images, you can also join the group and share your pictures, and you can have a look at what other people have done there as well. So I've just swapped over again. I've decided to go in with the G17 a little bit thicker rather than the darkest color. I was trying to sort of I guess strengthen up this shadow still, but also blend out this really dark green a little bit more. I felt that it was still too defined, and it wasn't sort of blended in or smudged in as much as I wanted it. So I've got that YG17 there to do that. Okay, so once I'd finished with this colour, I actually went and left the picture for a little bit and came back to it because I was getting quite frustrated with the look of it, and the ink was still quite wet. So I kind of do stop for a minute, go away and come back. Now I'm using the colourless blender here to get rid of some of the marks that I went over the other leaves with, so you can use this as an eraser of sorts. So all I'm doing is going over this section where the darker colour had bled into that leaf, just to sort of straighten those lines up a bit, and I'm just going over it with that clear pen, and I'm pushing that dark ink back towards the rest of the dark ink, and I'll come back in later on with that YG00 and go over that again anyway, just to make sure I filled that in a little bit. But what that allows you to do is it allows you to make those lines really nice and crisp. You can also do it if you've gone over a section that you didn't want any color in, to push that color back out again. So that colorless blender is really great for erasing. mistakes and things like that. Also too, it's good for lifting up color. So a little bit later I use it on the greens in the background, the darker greens, to help sort of lighten it up and lift off some of the ink that was sticking on the page. So it is great for things like that as well. So making sure that you always clean the marker afterwards. My colorless blender nib is a little bit stained from green actually, but it's still coming out clear. So I just wanted to sort of mention that as well, because it does look like that the nib is kind of green, but it actually is just stained that color. It is still clear ink coming out of that. So I'm coming back in again now with that YG23 to try and sort of smooth off that darker blend again, and just popping this through the middle. So as I've come back and that had dried off a little bit, I could now see, because the marker dries a little bit lighter than when it goes on wet, I just wanted to see how it was looking before I added any more color into it. So it is a good idea to step back and have a look at it after, if you are getting frustrated with it like that as well. So I'm going to swap back over now to the YG00, and I'm just going to finish off these images now. So you can see as I've put on these multiple layers that really, really light color has extended really a lot further out towards the edge of those leaves now, which is what I think I was trying to create to begin with. I was quite happy with it, how it came out. It was a little rough, and of course I had to do a few layers to get that look, but I'm quite happy with it now that I've done that. So now I'm going to start with this background area. I'm using some G99 first, and I'm just going to go in and line around all of the leaves in this section. I'm going to even line over those dotted sort of areas in the back there. I think the idea is that those dotted ones are way further back in the background, and it's quite dark within that thick dense grass. So that's the idea that I sort of had, and I'm just coming in now and lining in all of the shadow areas first, so the darkest areas where other leaves are overlapping others and things like that. So I'm popping that in first. Okay, so as I finish off that, I'm going to start to fill out the white areas now around the dotted leaves. So I'm just filling that in with the full color in the background there to give it that nice dark shading. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off all those areas. Now what I might do is save you a little bit of time. Now I sort of played around with the background and couldn't get the look that I was looking for, but you could essentially go over this whole background area, even the dotted lines or the dotted spaces with that G99, and then just bring in a W9 or a C9, something dark in the greys, and just go over the top of that, which would have made those just stand out that little bit more in the background. But because I decided to play around with it, we didn't quite get there that quickly. So I'm just going to go in now. I'm bringing in a couple of green colors, and as I said, I had trouble with this silly marker being really sticky, which caused the background to kind of look shiny and strange. So yeah, I just play around with it really to get the look that I'm looking for. So please don't follow along and do exactly what I'm doing if your marker's not sticky and it goes down well, because you're just going to be wasting your time then. Just move my little shiny washi tape out the way there. I'm just playing around with some marker coding, marking my markers that do have refills to them, so that when I'm using them I know if I've got a refill for it or if I don't. Anyway, I'm coming in now with that G29, and you may not be able to see it really well here on the video, but there's a couple of shiny patches on the G99 that I wasn't happy with, so I'm going to come back in a little bit later with the colorless blender and just sort of blend that off a little bit. If yours is not like that, you don't have to do that. So I just wanted to let you know that I've done it because I didn't like the look of that shininess on the side there, but you may not have it, so you may not need to do it. So I've just brought in some G28 and I'm just going over the whole area again. So I'm actually even going over the G99. I just wanted to sort of, I guess, uniform the color a little bit, but you know, it's up to you. If you're quite happy with how it was in the first place, that's fine too. Also too, you could just use a grey in the background. You don't actually necessarily have to use green. I used it because I had it, but I think there's a number of colours that we could have used to go over this. I could have just used a grey even to go over the green to darken that up as well. But I've chosen this G28 to do that. So I'm just popping that on now, trying to get a little bit more depth in that background area. You can see how the marker's building up there and it's not sinking into the page. This is the areas that went quite shiny and it's a little bit frustrating. So I just kind of wiped some of it off with my finger. I think for some reason some markers like those darker greens, they have trouble going or layering. I think maybe because the ink might be slightly thicker than other inks. I'm not exactly sure, but it could be that these ones were older than the others and I just haven't used them as much as well, so that the ink has gone a little bit stickier in the pen as well. So it's sort of hard for me to know exactly why it's done that, but it has. So the two colors on top of each other didn't really go very well. So I've just used that colorless blender now and I'm just going over it a little bit just to get rid of some of the shininess that I didn't like where that marker had built up so much. I'm making sure that I wipe my marker off onto a scrap piece of paper as well, because it will get that ink onto it, because I'm lifting it off that page to sort of make it a little bit thinner. So I'm just finishing off the remainder of that stickiness. I pretty much ended up going over the whole lot with this marker and just lifted off that colour. So you can see now where I've lifted the colour off, I've just sort of wiped the colour onto a scrap piece of paper there. Look, it has put a little bit of texture through, which I quite like texture. I hate things looking so smooth and perfect anyway, because in nature that's not the case. There would have been lots of different colours in the background here. So I was quite happy with the way that it sort of looks a little bit sort of off. In some sections it's lighter and some it's darker. Now I'm going to start doing the underneath the ant now. I'm going to do like a gravel sort of sandy color here. So I'm using Y17 and I'm coming in and just popping this all over this, I guess, gravel area underneath the ant. So we're going to bring color, this will be our base color, and we're going to bring some colors in over the top of it. I'm going to kind of make it look a little bit I guess sort of multicolored through there. We're going to put some dots in there to make it look like rough dirt. I'm going to put some lines in to line out the shadow areas as well. So I've swapped out that Y17 and I've come in with some E33. Now I'm being really rough, and I'm just sort of dotting in and smudging in, I don't know if you can see that there, just the colour to make a little bit of a shadow underneath the ant. So just putting in, the areas where the legs might sort of be shadowing on the ground. And then when it goes over the leaves, I'm going to grab the green again and just pop in some shadows on the leaves underneath there as well. So you can see there I'm not doing anything really neatly, it's all just really rough. I'm dotting it in and smudging it sort of around, a little bit like a watercolor effect, I guess, but we're not sort of doing any uniform lines or defined lines here. Just coming in with that green, I've got YG23 first, just marking out those shadow areas. I'll put in some YG17 just to deepen up the middle of the shadow areas there, just to show that there's something leaning over the leaves. Next I'm going to bring in some E35 and I'm going to darken up these rocks underneath here. So I'm going to put a little bit more shadow through. I'm just using dotting effects or squiggly lines kind of, and just roughly laying this down. Now I've got some E17 with this kind of a reddy brown. I'm going to put a couple of details in the rocks here. I'm also going to use a little bit of this to do some dots around the areas as well. I'm going to bring that E35 back in, and I'm just going to put some more dots through here and just put a little bit over the top of the previous color on those rocky areas there, just to lighten them up a little bit. So just putting a little bit of texture through. I didn't want anything too specific and too, I guess, straight, because we're looking at shadow areas and things like that. So I've got that E17 again. I'm coming in and putting a little bit more of a shadow now. So I'm actually filling out some color around the actual ant area, and then just doing the dots around the other areas there. So I've swapped out that marker again. I'm using the E33 and I'm just coming in over the top of all of that area now and trying to sort of fill in a little bit more of this yellow area to blend that out a little bit, I guess. I'm still using that dotting effect. I'm not trying to do individual lines. I'm just sort of dotting it and smudging the marker, changing the angle of the marker as well to change the shape of those spots. Just popping that all over the yellow area now, and I'm also going over the top of some of the other areas as well. So now I'm using the Y17 and I'm trying to use it to saturate the color into this so that some of that color bleeds out a little bit. I wanted it kind of to be a little bit furry, so I'm wetting that page with this ink to try and get that to bleed out a little bit so it's not quite as defined as it is here. I'm also going to use the colorless blender as well, which is quite wet, and I'm coming in and using this to help smooth and make that a little bit more fuzzy as well. So we're trying to create, I guess, a little bit of a watercolor effect, but also still keeping to our shadows and things like that as well. So it does just sort of bleed out the color and make it look a little bit more fuzzy. And I've just made sure that I've cleaned off my marker there as well, so next time I use it, it doesn't put any color on the remaining page. So next we've got our ant. I'm not putting a lot of detail in this. I just remembered though that I don't actually do the highlights on the grass in this video, but I do go over the highlight areas of the grass as well as the ant to get my finished product as well. So I'm kind of just going in, and I guess I'm following the grayscale design that was already there to get a little bit of the shadow color. So I'm just laying this down here. I'm going to blend it out with some grays in a moment just to lighten up those highlighted areas a bit. Just filling out a little bit of the leaf or grass that I missed in the background there. So I've got some C9, and I'm going to come in and go over the top of the black and just sort of extend this a little bit further out. So we're going to try and keep with a black ant, but I'm just trying to put a little bit of shine through there as well. Okay, so I've got C7, and I'm coming over the top of that and blending that out a little bit further. So I'm trying to flick the marker out in some areas to make sure that I can blend off to the next color as well. And I've got some C5, and I'm just coming in and bringing that over the remainder of the area. I didn't want to go too much lighter because he is supposed to be black. If I went lighter, he's going to look a little bit different because he'll be, you know, lighter all the way through. I'm going to use a white gel pen to come in and put in some lines to give us those little highlight sections and make them a little bit brighter as well. So guys, I'm just finishing off with the white gel pen now on the highlights. Now, I didn't record it, but don't forget to make those highlights in the dewdrops a little bit brighter by putting a little bit of gel pen in there. I'm just using my finger to smudge some of it out so it's not quite as defined, and I'm lightening up that middle section a little bit as well. So I've done the legs, and also, as I said, I missed the dewdrops on the video. So guys, thanks so much for watching today. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you next time.